Hello everyone. Today we shall look into a scenario where we have these four columns. First one is machine ID, where we have three different machines. Okay, 0, 1 and 2. And we have two different processes, which is 0 and 1. There are different activity types like start activity type and end activity type. Okay, and we have respective timestamp related to that particular activity. Now what we want is the machine ID with respect to particular process and its start time and end time in different columns. So in order to achieve that output, we have different ways to achieve. Let us try to understand how to achieve it. I'll write the query select machine ID, comma process ID from we know the table no activity. Okay, and here in the machine and id we have that no underscore. Just retype it, machine id comma process underscore id. We need few other columns, which is the end time and start time timestamp. Okay, for that what we shall do is we shall use a lead function which could give us the respective timestamp. I'll write lead timestamp comma 1. I'll write over class where I'll write partition by machine underscore id, comma process underscore id. You have to order by activity type in descending order, and we shall name this column as end time. I'll put a comma. We shall copy this window function, lead function, and I'll paste it here. Instead of this end time, we can write the start time. All what we'll do is we'll make this instead of 1 we'll input 0 to make the input of the first row. Okay, and here we'll use the row number function in order to understand the output. Here I'll use over class partition by machine id comma process underscore id order by activity underscore type descending. I'll name it as row number. Okay, we have this table name. Here I'll put a comma so we don't have any further errors. I'll select this query and run it. Here you could see that we have the machine ID, process ID, end time, start time, and this respective row number. Here you could see that we have this end time, start time with respect to this since we have used the lead function. So in order to get the correct output, what we need to do is we need to include this in subquery. So what I'll write is select machine underscore id, process underscore id, end underscore time, and start underscore time from. I'll open the parenthesis and I'll close the parenthesis. Give a name for this table as A, where row number equal to 1. Okay. So if I select this query and run again, so this is the respective output which we want. For that particular machine ID, process ID, we have end time and start time. I hope you have understood how to make it. Initially, I have calculated the start time end time using lead functions where I have changed the offset, and using row number I have made it included into a subquery where in the outside of the query I have used a where condition. Okay, similarly the same output we can we can easily make it possible with the less number of lines. I'll copy this query, I'll paste it over here. Now let us make some changes. For example, here in the subquery, what we shall do is we shall remove all these things. I'll write I want all the columns from the table, comma. I'll take lead function where I'll include the timestamp comma 1 over partition by machine underscore id order by. Here I since I do not want to order by anything, I'll just take an select null option, okay, by default, which could help me in order by clause, and I'll name this column as lead underscore column. Okay, we have this from activity and we shall give the name as a. Here instead of this start time and end time, what we shall give is lead column, lead underscore call, and we can give this timestamp. Okay, here instead of this row number equal to 1, what we can do is we need to give the activity type equal to start. Now we shall run this query and understand what is the output. Okay, here the inner query, if we run, you could understand that it has given the lead rows for the respective output. Okay, and here if you could notice, if I select the whole query and run, you have this lead call and you have this timestamp, right? You could rename it. For example, I'll select the inner query, okay, and this is the start time and this is the end time. I could rename the columns lead call as end time and timestamp as start time. So we could get the same query with less number of lines using subquery and by just naming the column in a different way. Now we shall try to understand how to bring the same output using CT. Okay. So what I shall do is I shall copy this subquery. Okay. Just to make you understand. Here instead of that partition by machine ID, I'll include you know process ID as well, so that it could consider both the things, process underscore id, and I'll order by activity type. I'll name this column as timestamp 2 from the activity table. I'll just select this query, run and show you. Here what I have got is this start time, this is my end time, and of course I could I could filter out these rows which are not null. I can remove those and bring it from the CTE. So to include it in with CTE, I'll write with CTE as, I'll open the parenthesis, here I'll close the parenthesis. Okay, I can just write a simple select query, select machine underscore id comma process underscore id comma timestamp as end underscore time comma timestamp 2 as start underscore time from CTE, where timestamp 2 is not null. Okay, because we do not want this null rows, I have included that the timestamp 2 column is not null. So this is our CTE where I have written just selected the columns from that CTE and I have given the where condition which is not null. Okay, just I'll select it and run it. You could see that we have got the same output where we have machine ID, process ID, end time and start time. Okay, this is how we can make it possible using CTE. Let us make it possible using a pivot function in SQL, or you could say pivot method. What I'll do is I'll select the columns, all the columns from activity, and show you what are the columns again. Here we have select star from activity, and let us include it in a subquery, right? We'll name this subquery as some source table, or you can say yes. And here what I'll do is I'll select uh, here we'll give the columns. We can include it in from class, okay, where it acts as a total table. From this table we are going to select the data. Okay, now we need two things. One is the aggregation. What is the aggregation with respect to this column, and which is the column which we are going to pivot. The activity type is the column which we are going to pivot. So what we'll do is I'll write pivot, okay, and we can open the parenthesis, again we can close the parenthesis. In between we'll write the query. The aggregation is minimum of timestamp because we want the minimum value of timestamp. I'll write for activity underscore type in, okay, there are only two things which are present in the activity type, which is start and end. So what we shall do is I'll write square bracket start comma end. I'll close the parenthesis, and here again I can rename this pivot, here pivot function as b. Okay, so from this pivot we need to select the columns. So what we'll do is I need to select machine underscore id, process underscore id. I want the end column, okay, and I want the start column. These are the four columns which I want, and you could see that there is no error. Okay, now try to understand. This is our pivot where we have this aggregation for the activity type in these two columns, because we have only these activity types as start and end. Okay, and next here we have this select clause where we have this whole table. From this whole table we are fetching that machine id, process id. From the pivot we are fetching the end and start. Once we select and run this query, you could notice that we can get the same output: machine id, process id, end and start columns. So these are the four methods with using which we could get the similar output for the data which we have in this activity table, where you could see this data. Okay, I hope it is understandable. Please practice with this these kind of examples to understand better. This is all for now. Thank you for watching, and we shall meet in the next video.